Please give you are receiving the sound. So, okay.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the Artificial Intelligence Forum for Students, it is my great pleasure to welcome you all to today's session titled Beyond Disciplines Project-Based Learning in the AI Era. This event focuses on how generative AI can be integrated into project and research-based learning and how multi and interdisciplinary collaboration can help us transform classroom knowledge into meaningful real-world solutions. So, we are truly honored to have with us today our distinguished guest speaker, Professor Roshan Godaliyadda. Professor Roshan obtained his BSc in Electrical and Electronic Engineering with first-class honors from the University of Perak in 2005, and went on to complete his PhD in Electrical and Computer Engineering at the National University of Singapore in 2011. At present, he serves as a professor in the Department of Electrical and Electronic Engineering in Perak, and also as the Deputy Director at the Multidisciplinary AI Research Center. His outstanding work has been recognized through multiple accolades. He has received presidential awards for scientific publications across several years, as well as faculty research excellence awards. He has also been the recipient of Best Paper Awards at prestigious international conferences such as ICCSE 2018, ICIIS 2017, ICTER 2017, and IIS 2014. Beyond that, his work has been widely published in leading international journals, including IEEE Transactions on Smart Grid, IEEE Transactions on Geoscience and Remote Sensing, IEEE Access, Applied Energy Sensors, and PLUS, among many others. He is also a senior member of the IEEE USA and actively contributes to the IEEE Signal Processing Society, IEEE Computer Society, and IEEE Geoscience and Remote Sensing Society. So, ladies and gentlemen, it is indeed a privilege to have such a distinguished scholar and researcher with us today. Without further delay, please join me in warmly welcome Professor Roshan Godaliyadda to deliver his talk. Sir, the stage is yours.
Okay, thank you. So, first of all, I want to thank all of the organizing committee, including Dr. Kapila and the others as well, for inviting and organizing this. I think it's really good. My understanding is the second talk as well, right? So that is good, and I think what I wanted to do was, it is very obvious that AI itself as a technology, as a research stream, and probably as part of our lives is changing the education and research landscape. That's very clear. But what thing I want to bring forward here is some of the things that we are going to mention are possibly things that were already there to some extent, even before the sort of generative AI sort of advent happening during, let's say, the last couple of years. Because one thing I want to talk about is, as one who introduced me told, things like interdisciplinary research, project-based learning, doing and learning. All these types of strategies were always there, and educators were encouraged to follow these types of methods. However, in a weird way, sometimes nature or whatever forces our hand into certain things. One such example was the use of online tools to a greater extent once the pandemic started in 2020. Now, even before that, did we have video conferencing? Yes. Did we have online education to some extent? Yes. Coursera and various other tools were there? Yes. All that was there. However, it wasn't that mainstream. Only people who were really into that type of things were utilizing these things, right? But then, in an interesting, because I can clearly remember, like for instance, if I told like before 2020, let's have an online meeting to some of my colleagues at the Faculty of Engineering, majority would be like, no, that's clearly not the way. We have to have a meeting physically. I still do agree that physical meetings are good, but at certain times, having that added option helps. Same thing with project-based learning. Some of the things that I'll try to go into different levels of details and experiences when it comes to different projects, just to give you a little bit of context. And some of these projects itself that I want to talk about actually started probably like the roots of those projects started 10 to 12, 14 years back, right? So all that I think we need to take into account, even though we say that we are going to look at everything like rethink things under the generative AI landscape. It's in fact things that were already there that we have like started to look harder probably with generative AI or previously things like the pandemic and maybe even in Sri Lanka like the economic crisis, numerous things sort of forcing our hand. So the way I'm going to go about it is I'm going to look at work that has been done by myself, some of our colleagues at the Multidisciplinary Research Center, including some of the RS who are like scattered here and there amongst you as well, so that we can go towards a gradually conversational style of discussion. Right. So first, before I go into any of these things, specifically because we are having this particular session in the science faculty, I want to highlight how MARC or the Multidisciplinary AI Research Center is hoping to expand. Now, we are in the process, I think Praveen, Bonek and few others are in the process of upgrading the website as well, so that people become more aware of what is actually happening at MARC, because a lot of things are happening, some of which you have seen in social media. However, there is much more happening and much more people already involved, and maybe some people might not even know that. So we want to make that aware to many people. And another interesting thing is, on top of whatever is happening in what I call over there in the center, which is the MARC core team, which is at the moment stationed in the Faculty of Engineering, there is to be multiple satellite centers opened up across the university. Now, already MARC itself has collaborators from numerous faculties, numerous departments, in addition to the obviously the majority coming from elect and computer engineering departments in the Faculty of Engineering. Still, we already have numerous people coming from across all faculties, from dental to AHS to all these fields, right? So while that is true, we still want more people involved, right? So this is one of the reasons why Professor Janaki Ekanayak and few others have taken the initiative to create those satellite centers. You can see some of them: healthcare and well-being, smart agriculture, education and society, which actually just yesterday was opened in the Faculty of Arts, right? And I think the smart agriculture one would probably be stationed in the Faculty of Agriculture, and health and well-being probably in the medical faculty. But the interesting thing here is that the stationing is just a physical location. Don't be bothered by that. Let's take the first one actually, health and well-being or whatever, right? That while it is stationed in the medical faculty and medical, dental and allied health science staff are encouraged to join, engineering, science, agriculture, all who are doing research in those fields are encouraged to join as well. There is no restrictions. The whole MARC model is about inclusivity, not exclusivity. So what we want to do is get as many people involved as well, right? So probably one of the reasons why we want to do this is also to encourage the students, because like, even though we say that there is opportunities at the MARC core center for all students, generally what we have observed is a majority are engineering students who are coming, because obviously it's close and it's more related and all that, right? However, what we hope to do with this is to probably attract a more broad audience, right? So that's the general objective of that. And of course, I mean, these are details that are available in the MARC website, but just a little bit, I mean, you can see from here itself that our vision is generally geared towards this type of learning that we want to talk about here, right? We are talking about using AI, we are talking about using AI in multiple ways. Using AI in research, doing AI research, and mapping AI contextually to real world problems. I normally say that there is like few layers when it comes to AI related activities. One has to do with like people from electrical, computer engineering, computer science, and numerous other departments, maybe maths and physics as well, where we look into like the fundamentals of AI, the algorithms, what is inside, how does it work, all that type of things, right? So those are some of the things that we will first consider to be the inner layer. But then after that, there is the outer layer where we actually try to use AI in applications, right? These applications could be in agriculture, medicine, veterinary science, animal science, whatever. So that's the next layer, the application mapping. The last one has to do with like using AI as a technology, as a tool for education and research, right? So that's also there, right? The using of technology that was created by others. We try to create our own technology as well as use the technology. So all these aspects, I think you need to take into consideration when we talk about this, right? So here you can clearly see like carrying out AI-based research with a direct economic societal impact. Now, why this is important is because now we in the engineering faculty used to do, we still do, a lot of research is just on engineering, right? So that actually is while some of them are useful, some were really what I would call conjured up problems, like toy problems, where we would imagine now, okay, this must be the kind of agriculture problem that our algorithms will be applied. Like we are assuming. But a better strategy is to actually approach the people in agriculture, approach the people in medicine, and get those problems. Because that actually enables us to do more impactful research, more impactful project-based learning, and more importantly, the students will then expose themselves to real-world problems, creating more opportunities for learning. And I've seen from many that they are really enjoying that particular approach. Of course, little bit about the current core team, right? We have, I think, science faculty's own like Ramesh Ranavan as well as Professor Kyong, like being a couple of our advisors. There are a few others now being added into the mix. A couple of professors who are Peradeniya alumni from McMaster as well as McGill are also most likely to join that advisory team. And then of course we have our director, which is Professor Janaki Ekanath. He's also the URC director as well. I have worked with him for a very long time and he's completely supportive of this type of research-based learning, and he's probably one of the people that supported me and Parakram over there when we first came in with our new ideas and everything. When many people, as you know, are resistant to change, he was very supportive in that endeavor, right? Obviously, I think you might know Professor Roshan Godaliyadda, Dr. Asta Bandaranayak, all involved in these activities, Professor Vijita Herath and Roshan Godaliyadda from the dental faculty. All these are people part of the main core group of the main mark. However, now it is massively expanding and the satellite centers already have numerous staff members involved as well. But remember this is on the admin side of things. Research collaborators can be anybody, any staff, any student. I think as of now, probably like 40, I think 40 probably. Anybody remember like staff collaborators? 35, 40, I'm thinking. Yeah, I'm thinking around that much, right? So those things will be more available later. Anyhow, this is a like a funny exercise I told a couple of our interns to do, right? We have a bunch of interns at Marks. Some are people who are interning, like doing their industrial training from University of Ruhuna or Slate or various universities, right? And some are in fact what we call pre-engineering interns. These are people who have just done their A-levels and are just volunteering and things like that. I just told them a better way. This looks very weird, but I will tell you the method to the madness here, right? The point is, I told them, just go around and talk to these IRs and ACCAs and get an idea about what the research problems are and how they interconnect to each other, and in general, where do they fall, right? So this is a depiction of all the things that we are going to, we'll discuss some of these things, but many of the things that we are going to discuss. As you can see, mostly our research goes into thrust areas along those directions: engineering and technology, medical and health science, climate and remote sensing, all that area. So that's one way of looking at it. It's like, where is these technologies or research adapted? That's one side. So you can see why we want to show all of these things is to give you guys an idea, because different people like different things. Some people like applications in agriculture. Some people like medical stuff. Some people might like to be more closer to the center. The center being more application independent fundamentals of AI. And you can see a couple of projects over there in a very application independent sense. However, those projects also have their own applications. And you can see numerous connections here. For instance, you can see sports, and then on the other side, maybe some of those applications in wearable devices. Now, that green block over there is wearable devices. So, applications in sports, applications in prosthetics, rehab, numerous things, right? Manufacturing, quality control, all of these things. Just to give you an idea, this is more than anything else. Nobody needs to really read the diagram. It's just to show how interconnected the things are, right? How we also encourage brainstorming and collaboration amongst our students. So, for instance, maybe Temidu is doing like wearables and like agrivoltaics and things like that, and Dilshara is doing like ABMs and computer vision based projects. But they will talk, and we want them to talk, because one idea from one project might inspire another idea from another project, right? So that's how these things work. That's why I say like project based learning is essentially our model. I also want to talk a little bit about like the kind of outcomes, because we always say while we do projects, we want to make sure that they they yield measurable outcomes. The way you know that is based on things like publications. We do target very high impact publications. That's the general model we go for to measure proper outcomes. But is that our only objective? No. It is what I call a happy consequence of it. The actual objective is to do the work passionately. However, having publications, be part of research projects, national awards, all that also matters, because at the end of the day, it helps us to get funding, it helps us to encourage other people to join and all that stuff, right? We also do, things like data. Now, data, I think, is something probably many of, just to get an idea, I do want to get a feeling of the room. So around here, you guys are from which faculty? Which department? Science faculty? General one. General one. Same here, all of you. What about you guys over there? Just to get a feeling. Generally science. Like, what are your inclinations? Is it more towards mathematics, computer science, what? Physics. You like physics. What about you guys over there? Huh? Mathematics. Okay. Some physics, some mathematics, it seems. Okay. What about way back over there? What do you guys like? What is your preference and where are you guys from? Yeah. Any of you? Yeah. Department, are you already in physics, right? What about you? Yeah, sure, no problem. Yeah, you come. You guys just feel free to I don't care. Right. You're from? You're from chemistry. Yeah, that's really good. This is the thing. I actually don't want just people from like engineering and physics and maths, which of course I welcome.
And so we have like 10 from PGIS.
That's good. That's good. They are post-graduate students.
Yeah, mainly chemistry.
Mainly chemistry. That's really good, because one thing you will probably see here is this is not just limited to what we would assume to be the STEMmy areas, right? Like, but also other areas as well, right? Anyhow, data collection is a key point, and we do a lot of that. And then we have like another thing we do, which is very similar to what we are doing here now, which is outreach, awareness, capacity building, workshops, seminars, discussions, all that. And we do tons of it. All the staff members mentioned here do it like, crazy basically. Okay, just to give you an idea, like for instance, I'm doing one now, and I think Roshan did one, let's say yesterday, and then I think Friday we have the AIFS activities, obviously, but then Saturday, the Sunday, Monday, and all, we have a team of ours is going to Vaunia for like another program in the University of Vaunia, which also includes schools from the northern province, right? Then we will go immediately after that to Kurunegala, and there we are inviting students primarily from the Waimba province, and we have done things in the eastern province, in the western province, and obviously in Kandy, right? So we have numerous workshops and things like that, and these are places where I do encourage, like some people might just like the outreach part, some people might like the research part, some people might like the data collection part, some people might like, web, social media and all that. So there are always opportunities to join us in numerous ways, so collaborate with us. So just keep, and the reason I'm telling you these things is just to give you guys an idea about those things. And of course, there is training, like people coming in and learning, because that's obviously one of our main goals, right? So over there, you can see those 5 kids over there. Those are the pre-engineering interns I was talking about. So they just did their levels. They'll probably start their first year like in a month or so, right? And you have RS, the main RS. These are actually the new set of RS, right? Yeah, these are the new ones, right? So we have removed the old ones, no? Yeah, we have sent them away now, right? So that's also another thing I do want to touch upon, like where do they end up? That's also kind of important, right? Like if you took our five key previous RS, we had Tarakan from the department who is currently just started. Just today morning he was running around Princeton taking pictures and showing all that stuff to me. So basically, I mean, he's very obviously excited to do his PhD at Princeton, which is one of the most prestigious places in the world, right? This is the place where John Nash, Albert Einstein and all these people work. So it's a pretty big deal. And now he's going to start his PhD there. Interestingly, he's starting his PhD there with Sashini, who was also another RF of ours, who was from the computer engineering department, right? So we have those two. Then we have Keshava, who just started his PhD in Purdue, right? Purdue is basically the University of the Apollo Space Program, right? So Purdue is in the central location of USA. It's one of the top 10 universities in US as well as Northern America. So he is there. Then Malshan is going to start in University of College Park. And Viduranga he has already started, right? He has already started in Virginia Tech, right? So all very well-known universities. And we have others whom we call volunteers, like people who are part of research activities but were not permanently employed as RAs, doing their research in Johns Hopkins University, tons and tons doing in University of College Park, Australian universities, everywhere, right? So this is something we all are very proud of because it kind of endorses the work that we do. Because Princeton or Purdue recognizing, okay, this is the research that we do, and then thinking, no, we won't admit you guys in. Just the other day, Sashini and Taraka were telling, like when they looked at their recruits for Princeton this year, they were saying something like, sir, we felt like the real outliers because everybody else was already from bachelor's Cornell or bachelor's, from like Manchester or Tokyo or wherever, right? So it's really good that they are sort of stamping our University of Peradeniya mark there, right? And I'm sure many more will come because normally any of our students from any of our faculties, when they go there, they perform well. And then, we create that sort of effect. So, couple of projects, I think this is the first one, right? Yeah, this is the first one. So, wearables, right? So, wearables, I think some of you know about these things. Now, in wearable technology, I do want to touch upon things like where we focus our applications on. Things like analyzing the biomechanics, optimizing movement, and optimizing it for sports risk mitigation. We have collaborators from sports medicine, right? So sports medical experts are there. Those are separate, like from Candy Hospital and all that, right? The sports, Tevindu, it is what is Dr. Asela part of? Do you remember the actual unit?
Sports medicine unit of Candy General Hospital.
Exactly, right? So you have been there, right? So maybe you can give a couple of words on like what is happening there and how we can connect to that. Just I want the people to also get involved so that encourage you guys to converse as well. Into some things you noticed and maybe things that we are hoping to do in this project.
So this is using a wireless wearable device for sports motion analysis. And here again, like we said before, at the Candy General Hospital, we are collaborating with the sports medicine unit, to which we have some of the best athletes of Candy coming to attend for their treatment. And over there, we get the opportunity to get their readings, which is readings from elite athletes, and also readings from new athletes. And we can use our wearable device and our algorithms to compare them and to see how these new athletes could improve to the level of elite athletes.
Exactly.
And this is the main focus area of what we are trying to do with the sports with wearables.
I think we also want to like on one side we want to gauge on technique as well, right? I think we did a couple of work. I think even before you came, like Pritharaka interestingly started some of these work, right? And what they were doing was trying to see how well you can see like techniques. Like for instance, just take a table tennis serve, right? So we tell everybody to serve and we get the readings of everybody. And then we see like compared to like the professional guys, the ones who are actually playing table tennis, what the others might be doing wrong. And we notice issues with the wrist, issues with the shoulder. So you know, right? That's one other thing, right? We also do a little bit of this, right? This what do you call that? Quality assurance type of stuff in manufacturing, like welding and all that. I don't know whether you are part of it. It's there. Is it in the next one? Yeah, let's go here. Yeah, this is better. Yeah, this is a better one. Why don't you tell a couple of things? So that's the table tennis thing over there. You can see how it was sort of AI algorithms are used to classify like techniques and distinguish between them. Now, what is interesting here is we also have collaborators from the allied health sciences, specifically like physiotherapy and all that. And what they do is they actually try to give us an idea, because there are a lot of things we don't know. We are like engineering guys. There are a lot of other things like muscle groups, muscle strength, muscle flexibility, how those things sort of interconnect to each other, pressure distribution. So we have those people giving those insights as well, right? So anything else you want to specifically mention, Tevindu, here? Like maybe something I missed?
We also have another member of our team.
Anything to add? You guys don't need to stand up. Like just say whatever you have that you want to share, like maybe with these guys as well. Anything that comes to mind. One is even the device design, right? that itself was very tricky, because let's say we actually designed the device in the laboratory environment, and then we had certain issues, right? Maybe you can talk a little bit about those practicalities. Just to give you an idea about how things work, right? And how people learn things through doing.
Yeah, so when we were actually manufacturing this device and actually applying it in applications, significant problem came with the environmental signal distortion.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of, in some environments, especially we were doing some experiment at the
JRDC. Yeah.
Which was, now that problem came up because the JRDC was an entirely steel structure. So it was interfering with a lot of
communication
systems. So we needed to come up with sort of.
So we went to outdoor or maybe outdoor environments as well. That actually is applicable to the next one. I think where we are looking at gate and post and how walking patterns are affected by shoes and terrains and how different people's posture varies and all that stuff, right? So all that requires you to go into hills and mountains or wherever, and we need to make sure that the signaling is there. Is there more in that? No. You continue that.
So that was more.
So these just you continue. I'm just showing some of the applications for the audience. You continue.
So that was more of in the problems of engineering side. So there was another problem with the sports stuff where the signal, the rate at which you are acquiring data was not enough to capture fast-paced motions. So we needed to experiment with those type of things as well. Now anyone with engineering stuff knows you have a problem with speed and stability. So you try to go too fast, you kind of lose the stability of your data. So how do we balance those stuff and all of those things as well?
Exactly. So I mean, just looking at it, you can see here, right? Like we are talking about cricket and weightlifting, where things have certain ramifications, especially in cricket, where you need to capture quick movements and all that stuff, right? Interestingly, I mean, like me being from a certain generation, my motivation for this actually comes from Murali's action issues and all that, which I used to watch live way back in 1995 when he was first polled at the MCG, right? I don't think among the students any of them were born even during that time, right? 95? Nobody, right? Obviously. So anyhow, so I think people of our generation know why we are so inspired to go into this type of things. That's actually the birthplace of my research interest for this thing. Everything else just happened afterwards. Like what happens is when we are doing this, somebody comes and says, Roshan, there is another idea like this in prosthetics, another idea like this in gate and post, right? So speed versus here, walking patterns and all that, what happens like when, what you call this, safety shoes or heels or whatever things that like, especially females wear, what is the effect? Now that of course people are not running, obviously, right, hopefully, and therefore it's a more different problem, more differently paced problem, where you might need to look at the the post and everything, right? So it's different things, different problems. Okay, Parakram is also joining. He's also been a long-term collaborator of ours, right? So anyhow, those are the kind of problems. Anything else you guys want to add? I don't think we'll be able to go through all the projects, but I just want to give a flavor, Kapil, about the things that we are doing, right? Yeah.
I mean, like that sports one was also, it's very interesting and it's very fun because we get to try out different sports.
Exactly.
Right now we are working with weightlifting, table tennis, and we are going to start with cricket. And first of all, obtaining these readings is difficult, and making sure when we obtain the readings that we get the data the way we need it. In terms of, like he said before, speed and stability.
And also how many repetitions we need to do. Like AI is not an easy, you always see the glamorous outcome. But hidden behind the curtains is a lot of tedious work, right? Like just take like these weightlifting stuff, like they'll have to lift 100 times and recalibrate again, do stuff. Over here I think they need to climb up stuff and all that repeatedly again, tons and tons of people. Sometimes you realize after taking all the readings, some of the data is missing and you go back and again do it. So lot of menial work as well, right? A lot of that work. But in a way, it's still enjoyable, right? And also, they all work as a team. There's few others as well, not just these two. But I mean, these are the people who basically prepare the slides under my instruction. So these are all really their job, right? All of these, not just these two, many others as well, right? You guys are part of the sports one, mainly, right?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And like for example, when we think of table tennis, a service in table tennis might look very simple, but evaluating how good it is and
Yeah.
and making an AI model identify that evaluation of how good a service is not that easy.
Not that easy. Plenty of maths comes into play. I don't want to go into the theory here too much, but just to give you an idea, like from Kalman filters to denoising techniques to unsupervised clustering to anything and everything is really there, right? And for instance, here you can see the muscle group stuff, the gait cycle and all that, how it affects, musculoskeletal disorders and all that. Okay, I think we have a reasonable idea about this. So let's move on to something completely different. Actually, this is, not completely different, but different in an application sense, right? This is on biomedicine, right? So I don't know whether people here, some of you are interested, because like in engineering, that's one of those areas which has a huge interest, right? Every time we do this biomedical stuff, every time we ask people to come for projects, there will always be a significant portion, right, who are interested in biomedicine. And obviously, I want to first go in a top level sense, then I'll also introduce a couple of RAs that are working with us. So, one of the problems, now this is a very good example of we meeting experts and them giving us real problems in the real world. Like me and Parakut and few others, we used to do like these ECG signal detection problems. It's nice because we get to use all the mathematical algorithms that we learned during our PhD days, and like feel good about using that in this and that. But that's also, I'm not saying it's not bad, it's okay. But then we talked with the obstetrics and gynecology department people, and they were like, that is good, Roshan. We are happy to collaborate with you guys on that. However, we have some of these other problems, which has to do with, one actually not mentioned here, has to do with like fetal activity. I don't know, anybody might know, like from your sisters or older like aunts and all that, like when a female is pregnant, for pregnant mothers, they have been told to keep track of fetal activity, whether to see whether there is something wrong with the baby or not, hopefully, right? So for that motion information, they are just taking off manually. So it's a huge problem. So Professor Chaturatnayaka from the Faculty of Medicine told us that's a key problem. Another problem that he was telling us was to do with preterm birth. And as you can see from the statistics here, it's a highly impactful problem that affects a lot of socio-economically challenged groups, right? That's where you have a lot of premature deaths relating to mother and baby when it comes to preterm birth detection, right? So here we are doing numerous things with regard to that. Essentially what we are trying to do here is to analyze the muscle contraction motion patterns to predict whether there is a risk of preterm birth, right? So that's one of those projects. And of course, in that, we also want to say, as I was just saying, how the socio-economical factors of mothers from numerous backgrounds, demographies, how that affects this particular problem. I just want to see whether I am missing anything else. No, yeah. So, and another project here we are also doing with Professor Duminder Yasaratna, who is from the Department of Medicine, right? He's from medicine, but he's essentially a lung disease expert, right? Respiratory illnesses, right? And he brought us these other problems along with physiotherapy department people who are talking about how we can use numerous types of acoustic and other signals as well as pressure application techniques to see how breathing patterns can be optimized. So these projects, I think Kalana and Umesh and few others are also doing. Anybody else I forget also. Guys, coming, like just come here, like let's here, because these two and few others are like going all over the medical faculty and everywhere, and like come Umesh, come, and is there anybody else around here who's involved in that project? No, right? Then Senith is there, I think somewhere. Yeah, he's in the middle, hiding away. No, I just want to get. I just share some, and I would like if any of you, we don't need to have a separate Q&A session, Kapil. I was just thinking, it's inbuilt to this is what I'm thinking. So any one of you, if you have any questions, any ideas, thoughts, whatever, feel free to ask. Raise your hand or just ask, I don't care. Yeah, Kalana, maybe some experience on this project, any of you? So these Kalana, Umesha and Senith, right?
Right, so the plan of this project is to kind of like the lung volumes, it depends on how, like when you breathe, how much breathing is done by each of the segments of the lungs. So does all parts of the lung work kind of thing. But our plan is to like see the impact on each segment by using the sounds taken from the lung, 6 from the front and 6 from the back, and kind of try to see how the characteristics and properties change across these places, and see the volumes of these lungs, and also how these sounds differ from gender or let it be by BMI,
Exactly.
and kind of try
And
to
how the Mesha, like in this one, you can also talk about like the conversations. Like one thing I noticed, for instance, is like on one side we have the physiotherapy and the medical experts, and on the other side we have us, right? And the first challenge is to get conversations going, right? They speak a completely different language to us, and they will say this whatever, this is that whatever, capsule law, whatever things, and all the technical medical jargon, and we'll all do the same as well. We'll talk about that transform and this processing algorithm and all that, but gradually we converge, right? So I think that is something maybe all three of you can talk about, like when you talk with the other fields, how to get those conversations going, because that's
a common thread in most of the collaborative work that we have been engaged in.
Yeah, getting the conversation.
Getting the conversation started with. I mean, not only when we are working with like different faculties, but also when we were even when we were starting up, when we were working with us being signal processing people and working with the power engineering, still we have the same thing, right?
Because
like,
it's like,
the same department.
priorities are also different. We have different emphasis, right? So I might genuinely be interested in one thing here only. But however, the more I learn, what is really funny is, I think you guys, in just the other conversation, just the other day the conversation, you came to know so many other things where like air pollution, how you can quantify it, how you can detect it, how purification, whether it is effective, and how it correlates with breathing related diseases and all that, right? Maybe some of those also you can share, and maybe I'll show this one as well. The other diagrams that you guys created, maybe a bit of that. Anything, you just tell anything, because I just want the students here to get an idea about how project-based learning works, because you need to like if you are doing a biomedical degree, you need to learn a lot of biology, right? I mean, for instance, your degree itself is from my Moratua, it's the what is it called? Biomedical engineering, but it is under the thing, right? ENTC, but it's not included there. The electronic and telecom thing.
It's under that.
Yeah. So my point is that you would take a lot of biomedical modules, right?
Yeah.
So that plus, but even with that, I'm guessing you encountered many things here that is new, right? In the project.
Yes.
Yeah.
So even in this project, so if you look at the literature, when you consider the engineering part of signals, but when you go to the in hospitals, you not only take a signal and give a report, right? You ask the parents the history, the maternal history, okay, what kind of food do you eat, things like that. So we here are trying to kind of incorporate that all of that information together, and
Preventive medicine kind of
even when we were looking into these factors, it was not enough what we found through literature, and we went to the Ginanog's doctors, and then we got, okay, there are other factors also that contribute to this, not just what you found through literature. So these are what we ask from parents normally, and whether they understand what we say and how they would respond to what we ask.
This right to mention like we have two branches in medicine here, right? The preventive and the curative people. So in the curative side, we have the doctors that you all normally encounter, right? The OB/GYNs and everybody. In the preventive side, we have people in the community medicine side of things, who look at numerous statistics. I mean, I'm sure plenty of you do statistical analysis. So statistical analysis as well as it integrated with machine learning are utilized massively to identify underlying factors that affect certain things, right? So we collaborate with one of our most prolific researchers in our university, Professor Samat Dharmaratna, from the Faculty of Medicine, Community Medicine, on some of these projects. I think he's a well-reputed researcher who works a lot with I think Johns Hopkins University and numerous other places as well, right? So you have these things happening there. Anything else you guys want to share? I just flip through the slides while you talk, but just whatever you want to say. Like the devices were also in-house designed, right? That's our strategy here, right?
So when it's come to the So when it's come to data collection, in the medicine side, when it's come to preterm is basically if birth is before 37 weeks, so it's preterm, right? So when it's come to preterm, the cost will be high for the cost wise for the medical faculty, in the hospital will rise, drastically rise. We have to do the nutrition, we have to take care of them, and we have to monitor them. It's a huge cost. In the other hand, it's very high risk for the babies as well.
Yeah,
that's why it's a very.
I think it mentions here some of the statistics, right? Like 1 out of every 10 babies over in the US, for instance, is premature. So that's in the US, right? So think about everywhere else, right? And we don't have a lot of facilities that the US has, for instance, for like preterm babies, right? So these are, and it's a huge cost.
Yeah.
Also maintaining the babies in that nature. And there's racial disparities, things like that. Yeah.
In the Sri Lanka also, in the hospital wise, the highest cost also given for the premature.
Premature one, yeah?
Yeah. Then in here what we do is now since the number of data collection, the data difference, the data systems that we have is very low. That's why we are creating our own.
That's another point, which is that many of the times, one primary thing Parakram might also remember that the medical faculty always tells us is, Roshan, the data that we are using, the measures, everything is from people elsewhere. So in a way, like the metrics that we are using have to be completely redefined. So if the government itself has this now effort towards data digitalization, and we want to get more data out of our own people, so that our solutions are not for people from Norway or Finland, but for actual Sri Lankan mothers.
That's a common problem with
Yeah.
medical data, right? So actually, the physicists also can play an important role in sensor
And
designing
obviously,
and
I
things
think Tilo also just came in as well. Just to let you guys know, like he's my classmate as well. And so you're both in the same department, right? So but physicists have a huge role. Please tell me,
right? Sensor development and catching up. Like, we are dealing with very tiny signals which can make a huge impact, right? So and going back to what Roshan mentioned, so a lot of medical data. The problem is they were either collected in mostly for white Caucasians.
Yeah, exactly.
A lot of the data, or certain data collections we cannot replicate now because of a lot of ethical considerations and things like that. So that's a huge
The
deal.
ethical clearance itself is a whole other
It's a whole thing.
It's a whole other thing, right? But going back to the actual signaling side of things as well, like you can see here, like the way you place the electrodes and how all of those things sort of track towards us better identifying those muscle contraction movements that happen in the probably around the early part of the third trimester, and see how frequency domain information, spatiotemporal general information, any of these things, how they connect to each other and how they ultimately affect the preterm birth risk, right? So there is a whole part where we one thing I do want to mention is like we are pretty big on like explainability in whatever our solution. So we don't just like plug and play some AI thing and just hope for the best. I don't think that should be the way that we do any AI based research. It has to be linked to an explainability factor. So for instance here we would actually dig into the algorithms and see okay, why does, for instance, in this particular case, the male coefficients or whatever will work, right? We want to explain those things, and I think you guys are like in the process of finalizing one of the journal papers. I think very soon you will publish it, and huge emphasis was given to give medical explanations, to give signal processing explanations, not just show we beat this algorithm and that's why we want to get the paper published or whatever, right? So these are things. Anything else you guys want to add while I just speed through here? Anything interesting? Nothing.
The second part, the first part, we need the device. The basic thing is the other part is what we are doing, we just need the data. So in the rural area, if we don't have the device, we can just get the data and we can see whether what is the impact on the life. We can see the risk of being
and think about it is like this, like sometimes nutritional habits of mothers, certain beliefs of mothers or their parents, all these things affect preterm birth risk, right? So we want solutions to not be based on assumptions, but based on data. So when we say, okay, nutrition affects preterm birth risk in this way, you have to come with evidence, not just like hypothesize and be like, okay, this must be the case, right? Okay, thanks all of you. Let's move on to something else. We'll touch a couple of projects here and there. Okay, so this one, this is interesting one. So this is on agent-based modeling. I think this is an interesting one because we started this project way back during what we call the AI for COVID phase, right?
Height of COVID.
Height of COVID. We got a Canadian grant from IDRC, which was a $1 million Canadian grant we jointly got with another university in Malaysia. It's one of the largest grants I think we have received in the university, which was primarily, the PI was Prof. Janakekanayak, and we were like the AI experts on that particular grant. And one of the problems that we were trying to tackle in that one had to do with using AI to mitigate the impact of the pandemic, ongoing or future. Right? One side was the socio-economic side of it, like how it affects education and all that. We'll go into that later. The other side of it has to do with like this is propagation modeling. right? Which has to do with using things like agent-based models to simulate environments. So people who are like in computer science and all that will find it interesting, coming up with motion models based on probabilistic models that realistically emulate the human behavior, and injecting certain types of diseases and seeing how diseases propagate through that. So think of it in a very, like if you have done like video games, think of it like a simulated environment, like Sims type of thing, but of course tons and tons of agents, where the agents' motions are modeled using probability distributions and learn through real data. This is always something we do. We don't just have it like, first we have mathematical models, we synthesize, but then we add a learnability factor to it. We want real behaviors to be reflected. So that's one side of it. And what we did was, then after that project just gradually went along that trajectory, we thought like, okay, where else can these things be applicable? And we approached, I think, Rajnish, Dr. Vanderkorn from zoology as well, and few others from geography as well. And we are like going into modeling human behavior. And he himself, like in the very first conversation, he was telling something interesting. I was telling him about like motion models and the level of randomness in the distributions when you try to learn motion and all that. And he quickly like was thinking, hey Roshan, then why don't we link the level of cognitive capability of the animal with the randomness of the walks, right? Because think about it, like when you have a little bit more cognitive thinking in your head, right? What you do is you probably plan out your day. You don't just randomly scurry about like, okay, got it, eat. That's not what you do, right? You have a method to your madness, right? So this itself, there are some people who do that. It seems otherwise. Okay, there are some who are more random than others. No, okay. So anyhow, my point is, you now think about that, right? Like obviously, once it is told, it makes perfect sense to us. But the fact that we got that zoology expert in our group enabled us to go along that lane, because what we want in interdisciplinary research is sort of having people give more and more perspective, right? More perspective always helps, right? You might not agree with everything, but it always helps to get more perspective, right? This is exactly why I was telling like what he is doing with organizing all these things, that Dr. Kapila and all is really good, because you guys are essentially getting more perspective from Isuru, from me, from Parakrama, from Damayanti, whoever, right? So that's the thing. So this is more or less on that, like there are a couple of people involved. But let's see, is there anything? Yeah, this is the other one. I'll put both of them together, right? And I'll invite both the groups together. So this is the other side of it, which is the socio-economic side, right? One was modeling the pandemic disease spread and all that using ABMs. The other side had to do with like, okay, how did online education affect the student population? How did it affect your psychology and all that stuff, right? So we work with education science, social science, sociology, psychology, experts from the faculty of arts. And we published in things like, Nature, what is that? Nature Communications in Social Sciences and Humanities, Frontiers in Psychology. Really interesting. You know what was really interesting about it? We actually went and collected data from 12,000 households. So it was a major endeavor across the districts, right? We got experiences
covering the whole country.
Yeah, covering the whole country. And we covered many impacts. Things like it was like a 45-minute interview with about 12,000 households. Just think about the scale of the operation, right? It's a massive operation, and it was completely funded by IDRC Canada. We have made the data sets, everything publicly available. It's available in Data in Brief. And on top of that, we were looking at all this: education impact, nutritional impact, economic impact, all of these. One thing I learned from all of this is how much theoretically social sciences require maths. Now I didn't know this to that extent. When I really went into it, I was like, hey, wait a minute, all this SIGPRO stuff that we are doing, our signals are essentially, they are survey responses. When they use the Likert scale and all that, they are discretizing the signals, and essentially the questions are really sensory systems. So essentially what we consider to be the signal processing problem is essentially what social sciences use in a different way. So we were able to come up with new AI techniques to sort of gauge into that survey instrument to get more insights on these things. And some were interesting insights, like a lot of people talk about social media, right? So, for instance, we were talking about, this was in the psychological impact, right? Yeah, the psychological impact, we were looking at how people were affected in terms of like loneliness, like many things, like anxiety, depression, all these things, how the pandemic affected, like when students were staying at home continuously, not engaging with their peers and all that stuff, right? One thing that happened there was like, you identify factors. So factors are essentially like eigendirections of the data space that has been spanned by the survey instrument, right? So what was interesting was, when you looked at the way the vectors were aligning, one thing we noticed was like the vector that was supposedly mapping substance abuse, right? Like when you are like depressed or whatever, like drinking more, smoking more, whatever, drugs, whatever. Interesting is the one that was more aligned with usage of social media to high levels. This was actual data driven, Thiru and Kapila, right? So really, like, we didn't assume, this just popped out of the data, right? Interestingly, social connectedness was in a different vector. Okay, so what this is like definitive evidence that sometimes while there was some residual connection with connectedness, of course, people to some extent use social media for that, but primarily when you go to those high levels, it's essentially substance abuse. You get addicted. You get addicted. I am sure that many of you will think, this is reflective, this is indicative of your human experience, right? So these are things, and you can see algorithms, and we have to work with so many people. We also do demographic studies. We look at how population pyramids affect diseases, disease vulnerabilities, all that stuff, right? So maybe a couple of you guys here, maybe just come and share, like ABM group, maybe 1 or 2 people, Atulya, Buddhi, Dilshara, Kalana, anybody come? Yeah, Atulya.
So
Just come, just give some experiences. Maybe not all, maybe whoever likes. Couple of people come and just share some experiences.
So one of the key insights that we got was to think about all these sociology and psychology surveys as sensory measurement problems, right? So we are trying to get a certain measurement, and it comes with a certain uncertainty, certain probability randomness, right? So the crucial factor was that insight. That was very useful in coming up many of the conclusions, and that's one of the reasons why those publishers and the reviewers found our work very enlightening and
some of them were like surprising us even, right? That was the interesting part. Yeah. Atulya, Dilshad, anything? Like, we can go to the wildlife one first, like that by itself is interesting. Any experiences here with ABM?
Yeah, so agent-based modeling, I mean, previously it was done for humans, but interestingly now it has been moved on with animals.
And just 1 second now, he is Dilshad and he's from the University of Ruhuna, again from electrical and electronic engineering. So the reason I'm mentioning these things is just to show you that different people from earlier she was from University of Toronto, you are from University of Ruhuna, some are from here, some are from computer engineering. So I just want to show that there is opportunities for collaboration for everybody. That's another message I want to say. Please continue.
Yeah. So now it's been moving on with animal. So basically we are focusing on 2 types of animals. Like one is monkeys. I mean, in Sri Lanka we have this monkey problem, especially in candies, I see. And there's another problem with elephants. I mean, not in candies specifically,
but especially in the farmlands and all,
yeah,
right?
Yeah. So I mean, by introducing this agent-based modeling, I think we can bring up a solution for these issues that we have right now. And also, I need to talk about a little bit about how I gained through this mark. I mean, I was previously in Roshan, and I came to the mark with supervision of Prof. Godaliyadda. And it was actually, for you to get a bit of idea of that, it's a very, it's very interesting to do projects with, in various types of disciplines. So, I mean, to be honest, I didn't have that much of an experience with different types of areas that we can actually focus. So I'm involved in this project, agent-based modeling, which is basically deal with socioeconomics and stuff. And another project that I'm dealing with is computer vision project.
We'll actually touch on that later, little bit.
So that multidisciplinary flavor is there. So I'm inviting you guys also to join with us. Maybe if you are interested. I mean, while we are doing this, while Professor Godaliyadda is explaining all this stuff, you can get some sort of an idea about what might align to you. I mean,
that's one of the objectives here, right?
Yeah. So that's one of the objectives. Yeah.
Definitely. Anything else to add, Atulya or Buddhi?
So I'll talk about the demographic insights, right? So next one.
Next one.
Yeah. So in this case, what we were observing that was when we take the mortalities of a certain disease for a given country, and we assume that it should have something to do with its demographics. So when we are talking about demographics, the best way to tackle the demographic structure is a population pyramid.
So it's a breakdown of the age spread, right?
So you can see the population pyramids there. You can see the one with blue and red.
I just said one thing, then you can start. Like one thing we were tackling, like we started off a little earlier as well. One thing we were tackling is like we felt like population pyramids obviously gives a lot of money. It doesn't give all the insight, but it gives an indication about the socio-economics of the country. And when we worked again with like Samath and all from community medicine, right? What we noticed was we want to quantify these things, and they were using standard statistical measures. But we normally don't like to do that. We always like to make up our own stuff, right? So therefore, we came up with certain numerous statistical measures that would better encapsulate the information that is hidden here, and that's probably what you guys will now allude to.
So what the population pyramid is, the strength of the population pyramid is, it captures the variation of the population over time, right? And it also captures the disparity between male and female also, right? So that altogether puts in it promotes the population pyramid as a metric of not only population but as a socio-economic phenomenon.
Like we talk about like birth rate declines and all these. Like all these are hidden information here. So how do you get that? Data visualization, data analytics, statistics. I'm sure some of you must be interested in these things, and these are always hot topic areas, highly employable areas, right? I want to touch on that as well. Maybe a little bit good. Yeah.
So because already has mentioned everything, the one thing I want to mention is that this is basically care divergence.
Nothing left to say for you.
This is actually what I wanted to say is this care divergence.
Good way to live.
It is not engineering.
Basically,
it is process and so physics and mathematics.
Exactly.
You may and
you must have encountered these things as well. They are favored in a different way. I do. When you mentioned that, I do want to go. Is there anything else to add to that?
So the rationale behind the study was, as I mentioned earlier, we needed to check whether there is a connection between disease mortality and the demographic. And to make sure that we can tackle this problem easily, we needed to derive a scalar metric using population pyramid. So to derive the scalar metric, we use scale divergence. And the people who are doing statistics here might
Exactly. And we wanted that because it gives a quantification of the disparity between distributions, right? So that enables us to model the visual context into a statistical framework, right? And
just one more thing to add. So the world already knows that.
So it seems he has a lot to say.
So in this project, what we are doing, the world already knows that the regressive pyramids like Japan is more affected to non-communicable diseases. But they don't have metric like how affected are they?
Like we assume, but we don't know how to quantify. These are
so the pop divergence bridges that gap and use a disease, how affected that disease to a country.
Exactly.
It evaluates like in the sense of evaluating the disease.
Quantifiable evidence.
Yes,
Quantifiable evidence is what we are looking for. Okay, so we are pressed for time. I don't know whether we'll be able to cover all the stuff. So, but let's try one more too, because I noticed here and there like chemistry and other people are also there. So here we are talking about like multispectral imaging and how it affects food quality, adulteration, contamination, and all that stuff. Right? I'll let the MSI group go into the details. So maybe Senit, Sandunika, Malshan, anybody else I missed, Mario. Whoever likes, Malshan is better, definitely to come, right? And maybe a few others, right? Because I want to, in this one, interestingly, we started this collaboration with our current Vice Chancellor. He was one of our first collaborators because he was talking about like adulteration of turmeric powder way back when we were doing spectral imaging. When this was not a thing, this was way back, like say 8-9 years back, right? And yeah, spectral imaging, and obviously after that, there we use like transmittance-based, reflectance-based spectral imaging, numerous applications. So you guys can talk a little bit about the applications as well. Maybe like the things that you are doing, you might need this, so that's okay.
So this is where we actually like the thing multidisciplinary is actually works because we have worked with the agriculture faculty and the even here the botany department.
We worked with botany as well.
Yes. Yeah. We were there for like more than 1.5 years. Like we worked there, so we were able to like detect the aflatoxin in food samples as well. So the main thing is like we have this engineering solution, and we don't have the exact problems to solve. Like there we don't have those things. Even that only that soil thing is engineering.
Soil
moisture. All the other stuff are basically either science faculty or the other faculties.
Exactly.
So that's what I have to say. Like this is where you have actually the multidisciplinary work.
Yeah, and Malshan, like just think about it. Like we had to get some idea about like how this fungal growth happens and how bacterial growth and how it affects the toxicity level. So these are not our areas, right? But we have to have some idea about it when we want to examine these things. On top of that, there is a reasonable amount of physics here, right? I mean, certain types of physics here as well, like the optics domain, right?
Interesting things like sometimes like
essentially spectral imaging.
A toxin project, like we literature reviewed like what are the main effects of the toxicity in foods. And when we discuss about with our supervisor in the botany department, yes, and she agreed, yes, you are exactly correct, and that's the way we should proceed.
Exactly. Right? So yeah, I think we got the reasonable message that we want to convey on this one. Just again, giving you guys that insight that, like when it comes to electrical and computer engineering, it actually reaches everything. Anything else to add, Sunny? Maybe? Nothing to add. No. Man of few words. Yeah. Right. So this is on remote sensing, right? So remote. I'll go through a couple here, and then I'll bring a few people. Just want to give a little bit of picture. So this is on the remote sensing problem, right? GIS solutions and all that, using hyperspectral imaging to track land cover mapping, to detect changes in the environment. Tons and tons of algorithms here. This is something that I have worked with Parakram and a few others for a long time. It's a thing that I really like because there's a mathematical component involved in it where you use either signal processing or deep learning, but you don't just deep learn in the sense like plug and play. You have to really go in and sort of inject yourself into the problem contextually, map the maths to the real world and see what happens. For instance, in abundance maps, that is land cover maps, we want to take the geometric properties in. Like for instance, is there continuity, is there sparsity, is there smoothness, what type of smoothness, all these things can be injected into the optimizers to better equip the arm the problem. And here you can see computer vision based stuff, which I am sure many of you have seen as typical examples of AI, right? The whole tracking of vehicles, in this case actually optical flow generation to track motion vectors of vehicles, and architectures that relate to that. So like Dilshan and few others are working on that project. And computer vision used for action recognition. I'm sure that again you have seen these things where we use video footages to detect what are the actions that are taking place, and we use a lot of mathematical constructs here to do the assessment. At this particular juncture, we are actually, obviously we are using graph convolutional networks. So we are obviously exploring the domain of spectral graph theory and graph convolutional networks, but very recently we stumbled upon the possibility of using hypergraphs here, basically because we know that, bottom line always what I try to do is, rather than just put the GCN over there, like try to, as I said, give a little bit of explainability to this, right? So therefore, one thing we always thought was, like when we are talking about actions are about joints moving together, so the coordination has to be there. So the graph information has to reflect that. So a hypergraph or a convolution of a graph actually enables us to capture this information, right? So that's on that one. And this is actually the same thing zoomed out. In the sense, you look at groups. So here you have like different people interacting and giving scene interpretability. Think of it like this is actually like another kind of weird long-term passion of mine where, like when you talk about video search, we normally do video search as in, we actually look at the title. The title or the keywords is what we are searching. But let's say you want to like quickly search through the frames and detect the frames where, okay, a goal was scored. Okay, where a foul was made or whatever, right? That kind of a thing, how do you sweep through the frames? So inferencing videos, this is something that is very cutting edge, and it's something that is being heavily explored. So that's something of interest that we are working on. And bioimaging in computer vision for bioimaging, right? Collaboration with the dental sciences, where we are trying to track the structure of nervous, like what is that? Mandibular canal. Yeah, exactly, the mandibular canal. And here we again impose certain types of geometric constraints. So you can see, right, like tons and tons of medical jargon we certainly need to learn just to do these projects. But more importantly, our interest is again imposing geometrical constraints to better do the image segmentation problem, right? So that kind of things are there. This is essentially that problem, right? Where we are trying to get the idea about that this area, right, for dental surgery applications. And here, this is on generative AI. Now, I'm sure you have looked at a lot of generative AI, but what we are interested in here is like actually going into the diffusion models to understand what is really happening there and trying to improve upon it. Right? So if you looked at the standard, this is essentially the diffusion process, the forward and the reverse diffusion process, obviously inspired by physics, right? And on top of that, what we want to do is, we want to define different types of measures so that it actually better captures probability distribution information. Because at the end of the day, all this data is being generated is modeled as data distributions. Data distributions have properties. These properties are captured through certain types of mathematical formulations. So in this case, we are trying to impose, like in addition to certain norms, maybe isometric measures into the equation, because at the end of the day, the way the diffusion process here works is it strips the distribution of structure and it ends up at white noise. So in a way, what you are doing is you are going through the manifold, sort of tracking it up to that point of isotropic white noise. So what we did was inject the level of isotropy onto that, so that it will give a little bit more of the higher level information, the higher order information of the data distribution, to the generation problem. And of course, there are applications. I just wanted to throw in a couple of applications as well. Like one of the applications, interestingly, has to do with image colorization, right? Old image restoration, blemish removal, denoising of images, right? You have seen, like in Facebook, I'm sure all of us have seen all these types of nice old images of Ceylon type of stuff, like colorizing of those things, colorizing of video footages, right? So that's one side of the applications. And then there's also the INRs, the implicit neural representations, which is essentially about what are the best ways of implicitly describing objects, right? So this is essentially viewing image, for instance, as a mapping between the spatial coordinates and the information in the RGB or whatever color domain. Once you learn that, it can actually quantify what an object is, and that can be used for all these applications. Denoising, blemish removal, again colorization, all these applications over here, and over there would be the actual algorithmic side of it, right? So you have these sort of commonalities there as well. These actually going into the INR problem, the algorithmic side, how to play with the activation function so that you get better frequency domain support for the data distribution, right? So all these things are connected, and these are things I'm sure like all of you guys from physics and maths would very much relate with. And couple of applications. This band RC is our own algorithm, by the way. You can see the ones that we are competing with are algorithms developed by Stanford and few other top-notch places, and we are actually outperforming them in terms of many measures. You can see, for instance, here we are actually trying to see the inpainting capability, denoising capability. Always we have highlighted the band RC our one. The ground truth is the actual truth that we want to generate. You can see how well we are performing compared to the actual international state of the art, right? So this is not like local algorithms across the board comparing with everybody else in the world, right? Large language models, right? We are looking into how large language models can give linguistic information. We are collaborating with the departments of English and Sinhala, because what we want to do is we want to see how the embedding space of the large language model is better utilized to track the changes of language patterns spatially and temporally. How languages evolve through time, linguistics, all that stuff, right? So I'm thinking of it like the LLM is LLM has its applications in like text generation and all that, but I'm more interested in the embedding space itself, that is inside the LLMs, right? Which is the place where what I would consider information resides, right? So what happens is all the information that is being learned by ChatGPT or Grok or DeepSeek or whatever is sort of embedded there, and capturing that information and the geometries of the embedding space will enable us to get insights on language studies, linguistics, all that stuff, and also about how well they can sort of equip other types of, emotional support and things like that. Misinformation, right? For misinformation, again, you can see we do play around a lot with entropy, right? So, because it has to do with the quantification of randomness, data regenerative capabilities, right? So, therefore, is the person really guessing? Right? Is the person playing a guessing game, or is there more structure while there is a certain level of randomness in the information? This is a very nice way to unsupervisedly detect misinformation. So otherwise you need to label the ground truth data, which is very problematic, right? Misinformation obviously is a big issue. Numerous types of low resource, there is in the sense Sinhalese, Tamil languages where we have only limited data sets that have been trained, right? And these on agrovoltaics, completely different thing, right? It is on energy systems, where we are trying to track, like tree growth patterns, how illumination affects it. We have collaborators from agriculture as well as botany again, right? Professor Gehan, right? If I remember. Botany, Lasanta from agriculture, right? So that's all agrovoltaics. I mean, I'm really skimming through everything here. Just wanted to give a visual picture because I don't expect all of you to like fully absorb the whole thing. The agenda here is just to show how different things come together to solve different problems, and now all of you will see something you learned somewhere in many of those slides. I'm almost certain of it, right? So that's on agrovoltaics. We do reinforcement learning, stuff like that there. There is also energy applications in AI, something that we started for a long time with Professor Janaka on smart grids, renewable energy integration, and unmixing problems pertaining to how load consumption patterns. It's all about load, demand and supply of the grid. The smart grid is essentially a grid which is self-aware in the sense that the supply and demand of the national grid becomes more aware about its behavioral patterns. So then you can better optimize the renewable energy integration, because renewable energy is a volatile load. It is something that always changes, and this is exactly what's causing all these types of grid instabilities, like you had one in Portugal and Spain, all that stuff, right? And obviously Professor Janaka is like one of the top-notch experts in probably not the whole region, I would say, right? So he's a very solid collaborator, and maybe like all those guys who are like in the computer vision, Jenny, HSI, maybe a few of you guys can just come here and share some stuff here as well, just to wrap things up. That's why I went a little bit faster. Praveen and you know who's there? Agrivoltech already Boneko, Tarindo, someone. I think one of you is good. Dilshan again, maybe someone from Shakti from diffusion, right? So a few people come here. Like I don't mind, like anything that pops to your head, just share with these guys, right? INR, Shakti, come. Shakti and who else is applicable? Yeah, Sanjula is there. Hey, Sanjula. I want everybody to have a chance, right? Come. So he's a lot of projects. Please start, Praveen. I'll just go up and down.
So, okay, given the topic of the talk of multidisciplinary research and project-based learning, I would like to talk about the remote sensing project and specifically the hyperspectral imaging team. So the problem is from geoscience, where we take satellite images and then basically we are trying to find what's in the image, whether it's water or mineral mapping, forest, etc. So it's a geoscience problem. However, the image is gathered using satellite data capable of capturing signals across many different frequencies. So where we are talking about emission and absorption spectrum, which comes from chemistry. However, because of low resolution, these signals...
I think they would like to say it comes from physics, I'm assuming.
So after that, the signals tend to mix, and so in order to develop models, we have physics-based models to develop how these signals interact. And then these physics-based models sort of enforce a geometry on the data. So these signals have a lot of data points, so we use vectors. So naturally linear algebra comes in. However, because of the geometry imposed by the mathematical models, topology comes in. However, these models are ideal. There are natural things that can vary the stuff. So we have to introduce probability to deal with uncertainty. So we start with a very practical geoscience problem with many applications in mineral mapping, environmental hazards, etc. However, we end up with a problem that is deeply rooted in quite abstract mathematics, such as topology. So this is why multidisciplinary is important. It is spanning two fields that are quite disparate in our usual academic mindset. And why project learning is important, say, when you are learning topology or linear algebra,
you need to learn the basics as well. Yeah.
We learn it in a very abstract sense with very traditional applications just motivating. However, when you do something like this, you get a really good idea of how to apply it practically. So we learned some of things, not as much as the maths guys here. But once we did this project, we got a really good confidence because we were actually applying them in a practical thing in our ways, producing novel algorithms. So even recently we are going for even statistical physics for making these algorithms more robust. So I think that speaks to what Mark stands for. So I will give it.
Yeah, maybe the Shakti and the diffusion guys maybe can add a little bit as well, I think, and then the INR guys as well, because diffusion itself had like tons and tons of like vector spaces, interpretations of metric spaces, because he was talking about all that sort of maths coming into play as well as physics, right? Yeah.
So if you look at the graph at the slide, so in our method, our method match onto the structure very well. So in like physics and chemistry.
So our method is the one at the corner, right? So this one is the default diffusion that is like, I'm sure you have heard of like stable diffusion and all that stuff that is around. Okay.
So if you want, we can make like chemical things. So if it's something, you have to be really correct. So in that case, you can see that our method, in that sense, is work very well. So, and one of the other thing is, so the sir said that one of the happy thing of a project is a paper. But even without that, this is my most enjoyable.
Yeah, this is the one where we are finding it most hard to sort of penetrate the high impact barrier because it's so competitive. It's so competitive. This is basically the overall hot topic of the race, right? And just think about the multiple ways we have to interpret the diffusion problem here, right? Like I always forget the multiple, the score-based model interpretation, right? Then the sort of the metric space-based interpretation, the probabilistic interpretation, the same problem interpreted Kapila from like tons and tons of angles, because different people are of different expertise, right? So they would say, okay, can't we view the diffusion in this way? And that then every time you view something from some way, you can improve upon it, right? That's the beauty of it, right? Yeah. So it's a very interesting problem which we have been doing for a long time. Already there is one guy who is doing his PhD in applied mathematics at Johns Hopkins, who is the one that me and Parakama started this project with, and these are the guys who are like continuing on that good work, right? His story is by itself it's interesting because he actually did chemical engineering first. He just selected chemical engineering, but then he quickly realized this is not my thing. And he was a little frustrated, he wanted to change his streams, might be indicated to anybody here, right? And he was like even depressed, even like I want to let go of this degree and all that. He just got a second upper, but he was always analytically inclined. So Dr. Pantali and Pereira introduced the two of us to him, and then we actually worked with him very closely, right? And went into this diffusion model stuff, and he really got nice outcomes out of it, ultimately resulting in his being recruited to the Johns Hopkins University for applied mathematics, which is a very interesting journey by itself, right?
Close to drop out.
Yeah, from there to a PhD in applied mathematics at one of the most prestigious universities in the world, right? So that's the thing, like people can like stray this way or that way. That's also a part of the learning experience, not just the technicalities, right? The fact that I mean, at your age, you guys have a lot of flexibility is something you need to know. Like at the moment, if you look at the statistics, I actually shared one in LinkedIn about like undergraduate employability, right? It's going down. It is true, but that is because of levels of uncertainty. That doesn't mean it will be there forever, but the best way to do things is make sure that your education experience is sort of has these multiple perspectives, so that you arm yourself with a little bit more of a diverse portfolio, right? So because challenges are to come, there is no doubt about it, but then of course history itself is armed with challenges, right? So therefore I don't think that should be a thing that we should be afraid of, right? Anything else, INR, Sanjulo, maybe anybody to add on any of the projects that you are working on, like the ones that I was just skimming through here, like tons and tons I was skimming through, right?
So in the INRs, what we have, these are the applications of INR. On the other hand, what we are doing is the developing new activation functions. So you may have familiar with like basic activation function like ReLU. So we have go beyond that, and in our neural networks we are using complex numbers. And currently we are facing with holomorphic functions some difficulties in activation. So Maths guys has
there's a lot of stuff there, right? And I mean, think about it now. Now people think of neural networks as black boxes. I never like that. I didn't go into neural networks at that age where it was black boxes. The two of us were like staying away from the research because it's just plug and play and generate some classes or whatever. But then people, as he's correctly pointed out, dug into it, tried to mathematically model the stabilities of it, the convergence of it. Here, we use we are exploiting the neural tangent mode, which actually talks about the transient properties of convergent properties of the neural network. On the other side, things like the way the activation function itself enables the neural network to better model things. So when he's talking about changing activation functions, he's going deep into the neural network, not just hyperparameter tuning here. Deep into the neural network to see how well the spectral bands are supported, to get frequency domain representations of all of these things, right? So the way the maths works is pretty hectic. So therefore, obviously, tons and tons of physicists and mathematicians have a huge role to play, right? Anything else you guys want to add? The applications of obviously I think is there. There's more is covered, right? Anybody else? Sanjuna? Can you do anybody? Yeah, basically I'll have to wrap up.
At the end, I will add some words about that biomedical imaging. At the beginning of the presentation, we talked about some project like biomedical projects, but basically the signals were taken by like muscle contractions and those stuff. But here, what we do is we are dealing with computer vision. So this is another way of tackling biomedical biomedical data. So here this particular problem is given to us by the data faculty. So basically there is this mandibular canal. So when if even like any of you have gone to an extraction of the tooth or implantation, they are taking a CBCT scan and they are manually detecting the nerve. So this manual procedure, even an expert dentist takes much time, like some like second stage dentist would take like 1 day for one patient. So that is very time consuming. So what we are doing here is we are analyzing these images to generate a algorithm or a model to detect this canal. So that is where we started, but this algorithm does not stop there. Like we can use the same procedure to detect like vessels, blood vessels, and lung, detecting the like cancer cells in the lung.
Anything which has that sort of tree-like structures and all that, because it's extendable problems, right? Because we even though we used an application, we generalized it. So we came up with the maths of it. So after that, we can plug it from there and put it into another medical stuff. So that's the good thing. Like for all those who are theoretically inclined, do not think like, generative AI or whatever like makes theory go away. No, actually it reinforces theory even more. To be honest, you are forced to think at a higher cognition now, right? So therefore, I would recommend for all of you to go more and more deeper into the analytical side of things. I mean, especially as people from maths and physics and computer science, I would highly recommend that.
So when you go to more and more practical problems, that's when you need more and more
mathematical problems. That's the beauty of it, right? Like linear time invariant systems is like for very nice simple stuff, like non-linear or stochastic systems or multivariable systems is where like the real world lives, right? So therefore, that's where you need more complexity. Yeah. And interestingly, Sanjula himself, like you are going for a PhD in applied mathematics, right? Yeah.
And also the one last thing is that this area is, if you see it in the top level, it is like that the area is like there are more like many research, they are producing results with high accuracies like 80%, 90%. But we show us like those structures which they generate with like high accuracies, they still lack the continuity of the structures.
Exactly. So this is a very interesting thing. Like how do you play with indices, right? You define a measure to say this is how you measure accuracy. And you can play the system, just like you can play with the GPS, the Z-scores, the H-index, anything. People are good at playing with the indices, right? So what he spotted, what his team spotted, is how like the indices were high, but the nerve is not connected. So they have matched some of the true pixels in some extent, but one of the most key criteria has been continuity measures. And that's where we stumbled across all those continuity measures, right? Maybe add a little bit on that, just a little bit.
We actually numbers and stuff.
I don't know whether some of them have encountered Betty numbers. The maths guys,
have
topology, all that.
Topology and Betty numbers and the chamfer distances. So what we are going to do is we are at the moment we are actually in the engineering faculty we do not have this background knowledge of these Betty numbers and stuff.
We have to self-learn.
We self-learn them and we are trying to impose this knowledge to the structures. So as I mentioned, although they have like big numbers in accuracies, still they lack the continuity. So we are trying to impose the continuity by using those
mathematical formulations, right? So you can see here the end conclusion is, I think, bottom line I want to show you guys here is that different things have different aspects, and you all can be your own researcher without like sort of sacrificing your passion. Like if you are a hands-on hardware guy, there is something for you. If you are a statistician type of person, there is something. If you are very analytical, topology and all that stuff, abstract algebra, there is something for you. If you like the physics of it, there is something for you, right? Medical, health, agriculture, all that, same thing. On top of all of those things, anybody who likes to volunteer, be part of awareness activities, very similar to this, I'm sure like this group itself is doing tons of work on that. Definitely, it's also another point, right? But we are pressed for time, so let's wrap things up. But we would like to thank you guys again for giving us a chance to sort of demonstrate and talk about the work that we do, right? Okay, thank you.
Professor Godaliyadda for your invaluable presentation, and Professor Ekenhaika for your insightful engagement, which added a great value to today's discussion. I also wish to thank the team for meaningful contributions, and my sincere gratitude goes to Dr. Kapila for his guidance and encouragement, which played a vital role in making this event a success. Finally, I extend my thanks to all the participants and organizers for their support and involvement. Before we conclude, we kindly invite you to share your feedback through the forum posted in our group. Your suggestions will help us enhance the quality of our future events. We look forward to your participation in our upcoming sessions. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, right?
I will post, we will post